Okay, yeah. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Michel. Thank you, Nick, for being here. Great to have you on the stage. From what I understand, we have a very diverse audience here, companies of every shape and size. So I want to start by asking a question, but please feel free to join the conversation. This is supposed to be a very interactive talk. So let me start by asking, well, I think in the audience, many of you were thinking, am I doing enough with data? Do I have the right processes? Do I have the right tools? Do I have the right people? And something that I want to get your input about is, what value does data bring to the table for early stage startups versus more mature companies? And how do you think this data mindset evolves over time?
So I think data by itself is not useful raw data. You have to do something with it. I think for very early stage startups, it actually, sometimes your common sense can be more important, but then than being too data driven when you're just getting started. But definitely it's important to start tracking some key metrics early on. Usually the things that get tracked are the things that get improved in a company in general. Like if you are tracking customer count and everyone knows you must get, this is the number everyone cares about and everyone's looking at the customer graph, that's probably the thing that's going to go up, something like this. Or if you're looking at churn rate, how retention rates, and everyone's focused on that, it's probably going to get better. So in the very early stage, it's good to pick maybe just a handful of things and focus on those.
There was this article at The Economist recently that compares, for the digital economy, data is like oil. Oil is this sticky thing that you take from the ground. It just can get on fire. If you don't really use it properly, it doesn't, it doesn't matter for much stuff. So people, some 30 years ago, some guys called Bill Inman and Ralph Campbell started saying, let's build something that you can analyze data, aggregate data, so you can help, as you said, what is not measured is not managed. But I think many companies are too worried about if I have the right people, if I have the right technology, if I have the right data. They're not really thinking, why am I doing this? Why should I be doing this? Most of the time you see people, as you said, tracking how many customers I have. But for an early stage startup, this is a wrong measure. Most of you might have read the Lean Startup. So if you measure your progress by getting customers while you're still looking for product market fit, maybe you are in the wrong kind of mindset. You need to understand if you are really creating value for your customer. So what I see in the media is a lot of emphasis in technology and really little emphasis in am I creating value for my customers? Am I creating value internally about the data I have?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So data only makes sense if it drives action, right? So one thing that I see very commonly in business intelligence teams is that people are too much focused on building reports and building dashboards and not so much in generating business value. So for example, something that I see every time in job descriptions is the first bullet point there is you're going to build dashboards and KPIs for investors or for your manager or for your boss or so on and so forth. And it doesn't necessarily bring any value to the business because the people that are actually closer to the analysis, closer to this complexity, are very far from the decision process, right? So my question here is, how should we structure teams to make sure they're actually driving business value from this data?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you think about it, there is a reason why building dashboards and reports is on the responsibilities of people who's going to be hired. That's why they need data. They need the understanding. They need the insights. The problem is, there is no bullet, silver bullet. You know, there's no dashboard that you build, and suddenly everything is fine. It's a constant process. One of the first companies I know that started doing business intelligence in Brazil is Lojas Marisa. They started back in 1996 with the, I think, with the founder. And still today, they develop projects like this constantly. So it varies depending on your strategy, it varies on what you're focusing on. But I'm sorry, come again with your question. I forgot what to say.
Yeah, my question was, how do you structure the teams and processes so that you make sure that these people are
I'm sorry, I was going through a line of thinking, I forgot it. But anyway, I think we were talking about this earlier, right? What I see in a lot of, with a lot of business intelligence guys or data scientists, is they go to the users, they go to marketing people, sales people, product people, and say, what do you want? What do you want of data? What do you want to analyze? And that's the worst question you can get. Because if I need to build my website, I'm not a designer, and a designer comes to me and says, what do you want on your website? I kind of know. I know that there is a need for me to say who I am, what are my services, but I really don't have that specific skill, the last mile, the knowledge that this is better for your need. And my belief is that was lacking in most of data science and business intelligence team today, is because they follow the IT pattern. Ask what the users want, and I build it and I deliver. What is missing in my view is there is a need for those guys to be more business guys. You gotta discuss why do you want to build this dashboard or this metric or this solution, because the usability rate is pretty low. I was at this company once. I went to analyze they want to move from platforms, and you're not gonna move everything. So they had like 400 reports and dashboards. And guess how many of those were used? Only one of all of those. And the reason was that report, the dashboard, was attached to a business process. So there was actually a process that were using that data, that report, to support decision. So if you're building things out of the blue and building things that someone asks you to do it, chances are they're gonna fall to the cracks. You're not really gonna see it long. But if you focus on value, if you focus on understanding the jobs that your internal customer or maybe your external customer wants to address, then you can come back and think about what kind of data solution I can build for those guys, and that's what I think it is missing in those teams today.
So I don't have a great answer because I've never personally built a data team or a BI team, so I wouldn't know how to structure one. But our focus has really been on trying to make analytics software easy so that the end consumers of the reporting can actually get their own answers to their own questions. So the business users who are, because the BI team is not usually the end consumer of the report or the insight that you might want to get from the report. So what we've been focusing on is trying to make it so that anyone in the company, be it in product or sales or something, can just go in and maybe get their own answers to the questions from the data. And one of the most powerful tools for kind of going beyond just high-level metrics or reporting is segmentation, where you can just say, okay, I want to filter by our revenues or users by some certain attribute. And this is quite simple tools you can use to get insight from straightforward data.
Yeah, the way we've structured this at Getninjas is basically go from the very strategic dashboards that are showing you metrics like revenue or churn rate or acquisition numbers, traffic, for example, and use this as some kind of alarm system. So if revenue goes down or if churn goes up, it triggers for our team the need to analyze this in more detail. And this resonates a lot with what Nick just said, because we need to segment data to actually get an understanding of what's going on. So if churn rate, if revenue goes down, for example, I can segment this by boleto and credit card. I can see the credit card failure rate. I can see why these credit cards are failing, and I can see if the success rate goes up after the third attempt. So we can really deep dive into these metrics and make sure we really understand what's driving this KPIs up or down. So this is the way it's structured. It seems to be working for us. Once we do that, we build something we call the briefing. So it's a neutral presentation about the problem, and then we ask the team to come up with solutions. So if churn is the problem, we identify the problem, we try to really segment data, show people what's going on, and make their creativity count, make sure we have the best hands on the problem. But it only goes so far, right? So data is pretty good at telling it what is happening, but not so good at telling us why that is happening or what are the underlying behaviors causing that. So sometimes we have to get out of the building and make sure we talk to customers, understand what's going on. So my next question to you would be exactly this. What can't be done with data, when we should just go out of the building, make some surveys, make some customer interviews, so on?
I think, yeah, there's kind of a few stages. One is like if you think about churn rate, what you were just talking about, you can measure churn, and then you probably want to, if something changes, you want to understand what's driving it, and then the last thing you want to do is maybe make some sort of change to improve it. Data isn't very good at helping you make that, deciding what to do to make that change. It's just it's too hard a problem to solve, because your analytics doesn't know what you have at your disposal. You might have an enormous ad budget that it doesn't know about. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of hard. But in terms of understanding, up to a point, yes. There are some things like around churn, especially, it can tell you, okay, your churn rate is high because of credit card failure rates being quite high, or something like that, versus people actually clicking cancel. This is like a simple example where data could do a very good job. But if you see that everybody's churning by actually clicking cancel, it doesn't really tell you why they're doing it. It's actually the best way with that is a lot of SaaS companies now, they have a survey. You go to cancel and say, why do you cancel? And they ask that question in a survey. And then data can help, because it can then segment by the different survey answers you've got. So it depends on how you set it up. That's the churn rate example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I've been in this since 1999, and kind of getting my hair white. But if you think about it, there's a reason why we want data to answer everything we want, because we are human beings and we hate uncertainty. We want to make sure everything is under our control. And so there is why there is this frenzy or going after, I don't know if frenzy is a word in English, whatever, going after data like this. Yeah, it works, right? That's fine. And so most of the time, I think people are, they are just control freaks. They want to know, they want to make sure you have all the data available and all the answers available. And most of the cases, there is this data warehouse approach where we're supposed to have all the data available, connected, and you're supposed to navigate through that. I've never seen it happening like this, like it's supposed to be. And so you're not going to have all the data by the time you need it. There was this case in this insurance company. There was a client of mine. What's the name in English for sinistralidade? Anyone? The amount of cars crashed over all cars they have. So there was this peak in Belo Horizonte, and they couldn't figure out why. So they went out of the building, and they discovered there was this pretty bad storm that creates some damage in those cars. So you're not going to have all the data. And sometimes you need to go out of the building, but at the same time, there is a need for some kind of instinct, some kind of hypothesis generation before you go after the data. There is no analysis like going crazy and pushing, getting attributes and data, and suddenly you got some insight. Now, you kind of propose some hypotheses first, and you go after those. Some hypotheses might be some kind of triggers like this, so your churn rate went up pretty bad. But sometimes you have a dedicated analyst that is trying to go deeper and try to understand some pattern. And that is where machine learning is really tapping into, because most of the time for the analyst by itself, it's hard to see the small nuances in the data. So this kind of technique, it can help you to unfold and understand some patterns that you couldn't see it before. But definitely the human factor in that area is much more important than people really think it is.
Another way to put that is that, which I've heard before, the idea of being data-driven is kind of, you might have heard the term data-driven. It's kind of nonsense. You want to have a hypothesis, and then you use your data to prove or disprove the hypothesis. Otherwise, it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah, and if you think about it, there is this misconception about science itself. If you think about scientific experiments, we think that knowledge comes from science just because you verified some hypothesis. But you got to understand that to conceive those hypotheses, you are anchored in your culture, in theology and philosophy. So the basic understanding of life drives you to define the hypothesis. And sometimes, because mainly in startup worlds, where we want to make it happen, we want things to go right. So there is a tendency for us to define hypotheses in the direction we want them to happen. So you got to be very careful when you talk about being data-driven, as you said, because it's not really that much scientific. You got to understand what you're doing and really think about it, what you're trying to prove for the best or for the worst.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Hypothesis comes from the analyst's head, so it's good that they have a good interaction with clients, that they understand what their users want and what are their pain points, so that they can derive their hypothesis and work their way on data to make sure they can prove or disprove this hypothesis. But speaking about being data-driven, once you start collecting a huge amount of data, it can become very tempting to make whole product decisions based on data, right? So you can A/B test the whole thing, and for every page that wins, you're going to implement that, and you end up with a product Frankenstein, which has no central line of thought. It doesn't really stand up as a product. It's just a bunch of experiments that happen to be right at that time. So how can we avoid this pitfall of optimizing for the local maximum and trying to A/B test the whole thing and trying to optimize this feature versus looking out for possible features that will drive the business 5 times bigger?
Although that approach is working well for Facebook, right? I mean, I've read about, apparently they do something similar. Like everything is tested, optimized, and you end up with a product that is a bit Frankenstein-esque. It does so many different things, right? I read one folly of being too data-driven from Zynga, the gaming company. Employee wrote a long blog post about how they were looking at patterns. They were collecting a ridiculous amount of data, and they were noticing that I think it was every time they had like coins at a discount or something, a lot of people would buy them, or something like this. And so lots of people, they said, okay, we make more money when they're at a discount. And so they kept doing it. And then they found that actually it's a really bad idea, because then people started waiting for that to happen. And actually, in the end, it actually was really bad for the business in general. How do you avoid that? Well, I think being hypothesis-driven helps, not just doing those kind of things. In terms of avoiding A/B testing, yeah.
There's a tricky question, because at the same time, I think A/B testing is pretty awesome, really, because it lets you avoid the biased thinking that puts you on a specific trend, the trend you want it to happen. But at the same time, you have all this overload in the team of testing everything. And I think the example you just gave is pretty interesting, that you learn, let's say the data told you every time you do something, it happens, do X, happens Y, and you might end up creating that behavior in the customer. So if you think about promotions, everybody in B2B landscape knows that the salesperson needs to beat their quota by the end of the month, so nobody really buys by the beginning of the month, because they know you can get a better discount when that happens. And in that case, data can also be really tricky. I was in this meeting with a sales director for a real estate company, and he was in front of his team, and he claimed, yeah, you know, Michel, data never lies, right? I say, yeah, but one thing that I say is that if you're afraid of flying, I'll send you this, right? If you're afraid of flying, I have a very good suggestion for you. You take an onion and put it in your pocket. She was, oh no, this story again. But chances are the plane is not going to crash, because statistically, it never happened before. So you got to be careful with the data you're taking a look at and how you apply the data to the solution, because you might end up creating bizarre behavior within your customers. And that's why, again, we get back to the hypothesis and taking a step back and looking at it more broadly, because not really a matter of fact checking. There are a lot of other things that end up creating that data, and most of the time you don't have the big picture.
Yeah. So
first question here. Someone? Question for our guys? Let me start again. I need a case of customers using your solution and changing the game before Chartmogul and after Chartmogul, before implementing the strategy lab consulting and after this.
You want to hear about an example of a customer changing their behavior after using our product?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the most common way our customers change their behavior after using our product is around pricing, because our product makes it easy to segment customers by how much they're paying you. And then you can see things like churn rate by how much they're paying you, and also what percentage of your revenue is coming from customers paying you, but in different bands. So I know of at least one SaaS company in San Francisco recently changed their pricing based off of seeing that actually their smaller customers were causing the vast majority of their churn, and also were contributing a negligible percentage of their overall revenue, and actually cannibalizing revenue from from the entire business because they're offering a lower, cheaper plan, and it's kind of cannibalized. There were very large companies buying this cheaper plan just because it was cheap. So they're actually just damaging their business by having this cheap plans. They decided to scrap it, and immediately their churn reduced because the cheaper customers were the ones that were churning, and their revenues started growing faster because there was no longer a cheap plan that the larger companies could buy. So that's like probably we've seen that across many SaaS customers of ours where they alter their pricing or packaging after seeing our reporting. Yeah.
Michel?
I can give you two examples. One that is looking inside the company, and another looking to their customers. I spent some time working in the US, and I was a project manager at MGM Studios in Santa Monica. And there was this director, a sales director, and I said, well, I'm tired of those tables with sales by region and by quarter and whatever. Can you do something differently? And they were really focused on pushing DVDs. You know, I was in this home entertainment project, and they were kind of any product company. They sell their goods to the retails and retail stores, so DVDs. So we created, based on the same data, we created this analysis or this analysis flow where they could choose a region, let's say Greater Los Angeles area, and the system would take the top 10 DVDs sold in that area and would compare with those bought by each store. And by the end of the day, for the salesperson, they would have a list of DVDs of titles that were not bought by the store, but all were in the top 10 or for the region. So the proposal is, I give a salesperson an argument to go to the store and say, look, those are the titles you're not buying from me, but they are in the top 10 sold in your area. You're losing money. So that's one way of seeing that the same data, exactly the same data, reconfigured in a way with focus on value, can generate money. But it was more than 10 years ago. But recently, you know, I've been in business intelligence, but I always loved product development and wanted to be in that field. And I had this opportunity to work with Resultados Digitais to build their marketing BI solution. And with them and other customers, we saw an interesting thing. Once you create a product based on the data you have, something like you guys are doing in Chartmogul, the executives that used to see your solution as a solution for their team started to see the solution as a solution for themselves. So what happened was that the salespeople started selling the platform before, starting with the business intelligence solution, because they're talking to the decision maker and they were saying, you're going to perform, your team is going to use this platform to perform these tasks. You're going to have the control looking at those dashboards. It changes dramatically. Nick was from Zendesk, right? And I remember Sam Boney, Vice President of Products at Zendesk, used to be Vice President of Marketing at GoodData, saying that the main reason customers would upgrade for the Pro version was because of the insights. I myself had this. I used to run a support team for a pretty big company in Brazil, an outsourced support team, and I bought Zendesk with this version specifically because of the metrics. Because every month I would need to go there and show my work. How could I do it without it? And it was a really important feature for me. There are two examples of how you can create value.
That's true at Zendesk, yeah. It was definitely the easiest way, the
Thank
number
you
one
for,
way.
Thank you for not saying I'm lying.
It was definitely the number one way when I was working there. Anyway, it might have changed now. To get people to buy the pro plan instead of the regular plan was because it came with the GoodData component, yeah.
The ability to see what is going on, most of the solutions today, they lack this ability to let your customers understand if they're doing well or if they're not. And that's the basics. And, but I also understand that it is not the core of most of the solutions. So analytics and reports are usually the nice-to-have feature when you talk with the customers. But along the time, when you start talking to enterprise companies, and they start feel that is missing. So that's an important piece.
I have one more example from about 2 weeks ago. I was speaking with one customer. It's a large consumer. They do insurance for pets in the United States on annual subscription. And they changed the number of times at the end of your annual subscription that they email you if your credit card is failing. They had changed it. They were emailing them like 7 or 8 times. And they thought, we're probably annoying our customers, emailing them like 7 or 8 times to update their credit card at the end of the year. So they changed it to like 3 times. And yeah, we're using our product. They saw that there's a feature where you do cohort analysis. So you see just the customers that are renewing, that are annual for that month. And they could see the churn rate was dramatically increasing. So at the aggregate level, churn rate looked fine. They looked like no problem. But if you're a big consumer company, retention, very small changes can matter. So looking at it on a cohort basis, they could see, actually, this is going to cause major problems for us if we keep doing this. So once they saw this, they immediately switched back to emailing the customers like 7 or 8 times because they realized that was actually a better way to go. They retain much more of their customers just by emailing them a lot, actually. So.
Temos uma pergunta aqui. Isso aqui só vale se jogar, tá, pessoal? Vou jogar aí, Marcelão.
That's a mic? Cool.
I'm glad I catch it. Well, first of all, let me say I'm a big fan of Chartmogul's product. And since I'm a happy customer of Vindi as well, I'm really happy of the integration of both of you, because it makes a lot of easier to see the data, and there's a balance between getting the data and having all the energy to extract the data. So the integration will make a lot easier for us. So thanks a lot for that. And my question is a little bit about your roadmap. So do you see Chartmogul evolving for metrics in marketing and integrating with marketing software as well? And I don't know, customer acquisition costs and other metrics that would cross with the financial metrics that you guys already have for your customers? Can you share a little bit of your roadmap?
Our product roadmap? Sure. Marketing, yeah. Actually, we do have an integration with HubSpot already. And we need to add more. We're going to release Intercom quite soon, although it's not strictly marketing, but it does make it very easy. A lot of SaaS companies hold a lot of data in Intercom. So yeah, you can pipe in things like lead source from HubSpot automatically, and then slice things like revenues by lead source and see, okay, how much are these HubSpot landing pages producing versus these ones and things like that in terms of revenue. So you can do that today. Customer acquisition costs is a bit harder for us because we don't have great data modeling around on the cost side. We're much more on the revenue side, so that's not near term. Yeah, but I can definitely share. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak too much about. Maybe we can share one-on-one after the event. Happy to do that. Yeah, there's loads of stuff. I get excited about I'm definitely product-focused founder, so I could talk about our product roadmap all day. But I don't know. I'm not sure like if everyone will find this interesting. Yeah.
Tem mais uma pergunta aqui? Vou jogar, hein? Segura aí.
Hey.
Almost ahead.
Okay, so my question is, I'm a CTO at a startup, and we have too low of a volume of data. I would like to know how a startup that is still at the really beginning can be more data-driven. I know that you told me that data-driven is alive, but how can we interpret a low volume of data, especially since I don't remember anything from my statistics classes in college? So how can I start learning what to look for? Because raw data is scary. It's overwhelming. I don't know what to look for. I don't know what to measure and what hypothesis to make.
Is it a SaaS business or consumer? Or?
Consumer. It's a legal documents business, like contracts.
Document management?
You store
Contract management, digital signatures.
It's SaaS.
Yes.
Software.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So for software, there's a lot of stuff online that is kind of like basic stuff. You offer like a free trial, so you measure like things like trial to paid conversion rates. It's like obvious basic stuff, even with very small amounts of data. If you get 10 trials per month, how many of those are converting to a paying customer? And if it's like really high, then maybe it's not something you need to focus on because that's a healthy part of your funnel. If it's really low, you need to focus on trying to improve the conversion of your trials. So it's like, there's definitely a lot of stuff online for SaaS companies. It's like some blogs like David Skoke at Matrix Partners, he's a venture capitalist, has a blog called forentrepreneurs.com, I think it's called. It's a fantastic resource, has like huge amounts of stuff around the different types of metrics that SaaS companies should track. Things like onboarding, like user behavior. I guess there's two or three types of data set for measuring like customers. One is like user behavior data, and there's things like onboarding. There's products like Mixpanel, which do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and they kind of help you decide what to measure as well. Like actually, when we speak to our customers, we found that one of the most important things that we provide them is not creating reports, but it's like we've decided, our product team has decided what to measure in the first place. So a lot of these products like Mixpanel and our product, there's a group of people have got together and decided, okay, if you want to understand onboarding and user behavior, these are the things that are important, and they kind of bake them into their product. So.
Yeah, you mentioned you have very low volume of data, right? Yeah, so I agree with Nick that you should have like a strategic perspective of what metrics you should be measuring. But I think you guys should be spending 95% of the time making sure that you have a good product, making sure you understand your customer, and making sure that your software is actually solving their problems and you have money on the table, basically. And then you can use data just to see if you're going in the right direction, right? So if you're growing number of customers or growing revenue in a powerful way, that's a good sign for you. But since you don't have that much data to like drill down, to analyze, to segment, I think you should spend like 90%, 95% of the time out of the building talking to customers.
You know, there is a reason why pretty small companies, stores, they don't really need business intelligence. That's because you got the first machine learning tool in here, and most of the time the owners, they know instinctively who could they sell to and who could not, who's a good customer and who's not, what products are the best. And so if you have very small amount of data, I think the best way, it means you might not have that much customers. So the best time you could spend is understanding those by doing qualitative research, talking to them, taking the nuances, and verifying with their behavior within the product if it makes sense. Another thing I would suggest, if the more you segment your customer base, the more consistent will be their behavior, and the better you will learn. Because if you have a very diverse customer base, it's kind of hard to find patterns, right? Because they're just different people, different kind of companies. And as Bernardo said, I think the main focus should be the product. You know, I'm just working on something like this right now to make it easier. We might become competitors someday, let's see. To make it easier to get the data and to get ready to go. But in your case, I suggest you need to first understand what success looks like. Because until you understand that, it's kind of hard to know if you're going well or not. I forgot to mention, but one of the benefits that I'm working with the customers is the benchmarking. So once you have a platform with a lot of customers like Vindi has, you can get each individual customers to be compared to others in terms of performance. And that's a very good indicator, because maybe if you drop 5% in your whatever metric you're measuring, you may be crying, but if the market drops 20, you should be celebrating. And the opposite is the same thing. Maybe you reach your goal, which by the way is just a fantasy, defining a goal of 5%, whatever, or 10% increase. If the market goes up 20%, you're kind of falling behind. So those are very relative, not relative. The metrics cannot be looked like standalone things, but you need a reference to compare. So I think the first thing is define what success looks like for you. You could do some benchmarking, talking to other startups that are doing well, and seeing within those metrics how they did. So you could compare yours and learn a great deal with that.
Próxima pergunta aqui? Temos uma aqui. Só vai assim, Edu, também.
Headshot.
Hi. I would like to ask, first of all, how many, well, you can say, exactly, but, how many customers you have already in Brazil? It can be more than 50, less than 50.
We have like 900 paying business customers globally, and we have 8 in Brazil. 8.
Okay. And I think now that with Vindi, you guys are going to be more focused here. Because I'm a user, I'm a fan.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
I have a suspicion about half of our customers in Brazil are in this room. That's my, at least, like, maybe
It's
more.
because of Rodrigo, no?
It might be more like,
Yeah, and
most of our eight Brazilian customers are here.
oh, that's
But
cool.
definitely, I was really excited a few months ago when Rodrigo contacted me and said, let's do an integration. I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And one thing more I would like to ask is about the mobile app, because nowadays I think the users of Chartmogul mostly use another app. I think it's somewhere else that develop. And I use that.
I use it too, yeah.
You used to? So
Yeah.
you guys have some plan to launch a mobile?
Yeah. So the mobile app that's on the App Store was built by one of our customers out of the Netherlands. So it's an unofficial app, but I also use it. It's quite useful. We do want to. We just need to hire like an iOS developer first, I guess. That's the problem. We just haven't made that investment yet, but definitely we want to do a mobile app. Absolutely.
Próxima pergunta
I would
aqui.
use it myself.
Posso?
Hi, Nick. I'm one of your 8 customers. Nice to meet you.
Maybe
I'm
everybody's
getting
here.
jealous.
Okay. I'm imagining that you using Chartmogul to evaluate Chartmogul metrics, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I want to understand, how do you see metrics to understand trends? When I see my dashboard, I can understand what's happening now, and I can understand what happened in the past.
Yeah.
But when I see a trend, I can measure some metrics I can mix some metrics. I can do, I don't know, what's the playbook of Chartmogul to understand trends?
Probably not particularly sophisticated. We're kind of working on a forecasting feature that might help us. But I think it might be similar to yourself. We just kind of segment. I guess one of the things that we do is we pipe in attributes from other systems. So one thing that we like to do is do net promoter score surveys. And one of our customers, Typeform, we didn't really invent this trick, but Typeform, which is a cool survey thing if anyone doesn't know about it. But anyway, they taught us this trick where you can pipe in the net promoter score onto the customer records, and then you slice your churn rate, your revenue churn rate, by net promoter score, and you can see kind of what impact does net promoter score have on churn. Like if it's really high, do they actually churn any less than if it's really low? They actually discovered that the people that don't reply to the survey at all by far have the highest churn rate out of everybody, like way higher than everybody else. Even if you answer like 0 or 1 or whatever the lowest score is, you're not actually churning very much usually. It's the ones that don't answer the survey in the first place that are churning like way, way higher. So they're like, okay, now we need to focus our energies on those guys that didn't even respond. I don't know if that's a trend, but I don't know if that answers your question. But,
Is it an in-app survey?
our one?
No, the NPS platform. Because it is an in-app survey, it might be a different problem. They're not logging in.
No, I think they were, yeah, that would be, that's right. That makes a lot of sense. Probably they're doing, I hope they're doing by email. And then it's like slightly fairer. Yeah.
Uma última pergunta aqui do público. Mais uma aí.
That's cool. So Nick, I want to know, you said that some of your customers made changes on pricing, for example, after seeing some metrics.
Yeah.
I want to know if you guys at Chartmogul, of course you did, but what kind of changes have you guys made on your product or pricing after seeing some metrics being affected by some reason?
Well, we're actually, we've kind of been doing this ourselves recently. Yeah, we have 2 plans right now, Essential and Mogul, and our Essential plan's cheaper. Average revenue per customer is like less than $100, and then on the Mogul it's like $300 something per month. And the Essential plan customers are churning at a much higher rate than the Mogul plan customers. And then also we looked at, so that makes us think, should we even bother with this Essential plan in the first place? We might drop it. And we're also thinking, we look at, in aggregate, the revenue our customers make. If they're small, how much money do we really make from them? And we saw like if they have a monthly recurring revenue of under about $20,000, it probably just makes sense to give our product to them for free.
Essential plan, you mean?
No, just like if one of our customers is like a startup making very little money themselves. Okay. We make very little revenues from them. So should we just give it to them for free, or like at a token, $1 price or something? So we were thinking about this as well, doing some kind of freemium plan.
Okay.
Okay, so speaking of integrations, Nick, I see a lot of data being stored in silos, So customer support data in Zendesk, payment data in Vindi, like acquisition data in Google Analytics or AdWords or Facebook. How do you get data out of these silos into your tool, and how should teams build visualizations that can leverage the fact that data is stored in different places?
I mean, it depends what you want to get out of it. So for customer service, like I used to work at Zendesk, where Zendesk now owns BIME and different analytics companies. It's a slightly different relationship, but with a customer service team, the managers of the customer service team usually want to achieve a few different things, like have a more efficient agents who answer tickets quickly. So it's like a first reply time and then a total resolution time. And they want to make sure that there's not some agent who's slacking off and hardly working, or just cherry picking easy tickets, this kind of thing. And for that stuff, it doesn't really matter that the data's in a silo. It doesn't matter because it's okay. It's just for the purpose of improving the efficiency of the customer service team. I don't think it's a big problem. But there's probably, I think one of the interesting things with customer service is you have all these like conversations from customers, and hidden in those conversations, there could be millions of tickets, are like probably patterns and things like that. So I think things like getting the data into a data warehouse and doing machine learning on it and things like that, where algorithms can spot patterns. You might know more about this than me, Michel, but
No, as I said in the beginning, I think data is it tends to be a really, really important asset for the company in the long run, and it's great that we can have lots of startups powered by all of these applications. But some of those companies, they use tens of those applications, 10 applications, 20 applications, and your data is spread around those solutions. So I think the sooner they realize that should be pulling the data to a S3 bucket, whatever, or a Redshift database, or Google BigQuery database, whatever. If you start pulling the data to keep it and saving it for later analysis, and even pushing it to Chartmogul from there, that could be a better approach. Because if you want to move from Zendesk to Octadesk, which is local partner, if you want to move from HubSpot to Resultados Digitais, whatever, the data is basically the same. The concepts should be the same. And so you keep control of this asset, which is yours, instead of just relying on the third partner that is focused on that solution. But integration is usually hard. You know, historically, 60 to 70% of the effort is on that piece. So you see more and more solutions like Chartmogul try to do to fetch the data directly. But it's kind of hard, you know. I believe that is a big source of cost for you guys to integrate to many data sources most of the time, and because they keep increasing. And I don't think you're going to be able to have all of them integrated. So I think a better approach is for the companies to pull the data out, create your data store as raw as it can be, and then later act on it, pushing to Chartmogul, running machine learning, or whatever.
The big, I mean, there's the segment.io or segment.com, right? They're the big company that does that. There's a bunch of competitors to them, but they're the ones that are currently leading that market of aggregation, and I think they even spin up a Amazon Redshift database for you, or you do it and connect it and they make it easy.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a lot of interesting insights at the intersection of this silo. So, for example, I want to see churn rate segmented by people that try to contact our customer support team or not. No, so that's pretty valuable. And related to this, we have a lot of teams now that want to make decisions. They want to make data-driven decisions. So let's say the customer support team or the sales team wants to evaluate performance. They want to evaluate their churn rates. They want to evaluate their revenue. Do you guys think we should have a centralized team, the data team, helping them with these reports, like getting the hands dirty and making the reports for them? Or should we be enabling them and teaching them how to make it on their own and just providing data, just providing like coaching and let them get to the analysis, to the results?
I mean, our whole business is predicated on kind of helping the whole company to take part and get answers to their own questions. But I think every company at any size ends up building out a data team. All of our largest customers, they have a data team that has a variety of tools. So I was speaking, Pipedrive, right, the CRM product. They have a data team and they have Tableau. They have like data warehouse, Tableau to do analysis. But if you speak to like someone in their product team, they'll often use our product just because it's easier and quicker. But then the data, if they have a different type of question or a complex question that needs an analyst to dive in, then they'll go to the data team and work with them. So I think what we're trying to do is delay the time before a company makes that investment. So a startup today shouldn't need to do that, make that investment. They can get like Google Analytics, Mixpanel, Chartmogul, and a few other different things for different stuff. But eventually, at some point, you're going to want to have that. You're going to want to make that investment, almost certainly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Rodrigo, I think we're running out of time, right?
Yeah, nós temos agora a melhor parte, que é o Happy Hour. Vocês vão poder compartilhar as ideias, pegar o Michel, o Bernardo e o Nick aí. A gente tem um horário para cumprir aqui e eu acho que vai ser um bom momento para vocês conversarem com eles nos bastidores. O que eu queria agora é uma salva de palmas para os nossos painelistas aqui.